Hi, this is Randall here in Texas.
And I'm Matt here in Michigan. Today, Randall and I are finally getting to review the latest James Bond movie, No Time to Die. It stars Daniel Craig as James Bond, Leah Seydoux, Lashana Lynch, Rami Malek, and Ralph Fiennes. It is written and directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga. He's probably best known for Beasts of No Nation and the first season of True Detective. Now, before Randall and I go any further, if you like this review, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to get notifications on our latest videos.
No Time to Die picks up 5 years after the events of Spectre, and we find James Bond in a self-imposed retirement. After news of a terrorist group stealing a secret bioweapon, James becomes compelled to get back in the hunt by his longtime CIA friend Felix, who lets him know that the terrorist group in question is connected to his old adversary, Spectre. It had about a $250 to $300 million budget, and it's reported that it had at least, these are probably small numbers, at least $100 million in marketing budget. Some of that money was completely wasted because they started marketing this film for its original release, so I have a history lesson for everybody. This film was originally scheduled for release way back in November 2019 and was delayed when Danny Boyle left the project as the director. They then rescheduled it to April of 2020, but obviously there was a small thing that happened around the entire globe that delayed it to November 2020. And then it was delayed to April 2021. It was delayed again, and we're finally getting to see it just now, October 2021. It has had generally positive reviews all around by both critics and audiences, and at the time of this filming has made about $120 million at the box office. It's been released in the UK for 2 weeks because that's just how James Bond films do. Matt, No Time to Die. We've waited a long time to see it. What did you think?
I enjoyed this film. I enjoyed this film quite a bit. But if I had to put on like a scale compared to the other Craig Bond films, I would put this one in the middle. My top two would be Skyfall and Casino Royale, and I think I would put this one right behind those. I did enjoy this movie, and it is a bit longer, 2 hours and about 45 minutes. But this film, to me, did not really feel that length as much because it kept my attention throughout the entire movie. Randall, what do you think about No Time to Die?
I think No Time to Die is such a worthy send off to the Daniel Craig era of James Bond, and it was absolutely worth the wait. I am super happy that I got to see this in theaters and I didn't have to do a home streaming for this. This is a film made for theaters, absolutely. And it's just generally a really good bookend for all of these Daniel Craig movies. I greatly enjoyed my time watching this film. I would almost say that this is right up there, like you said, with Skyfall and Casino Royale. We just did a flashback review on Casino Royale if you want to go check that out, but I almost put it maybe a little higher than Casino Royale, honestly, in my listing. So absolutely worth the wait. I guess that's the biggest thing. I've been telling people it was worth the wait.
Now, Randall and I want to go into a little bit of spoilers when talking about this film. There's so much in it. The film has been out for 2 weeks already in the UK. So if you haven't watched No Time to Die, skip around to like the end of the review. We'll have a timestamp below letting you know when we get past our spoilers of this review. So go look at that. Food forward. If you haven't seen it yet, we'll give you a little bit of time. So now, if you're still with us, you've already seen No Time to Die, and Randall and I are going to talk a little bit about spoilers. So, guys have been warned. All right, Randall. So much to go into this movie. I watched it last night. So you watched it a little bit earlier than I did. You've had a little bit more time to marinate with this film a bit. To me, I'm kind of going off, but Yeah, it was pretty hard not to talk more about this film with somebody kind of like waiting my turn. But now we get that opportunity to talk about this film. Part of the reason I think this is so good is that this movie hits on a lot of good elements that are in Bond films. Has a good look at our James Bond character, and it does have a good wrap up of this story that we've had through these Daniel Craig James Bond movies. I think the villain is good in this one too. I think the gadgets are good, and we even let the James Bond car, the DB5, shine a bit in this movie. There's a lot of elements for really good James Bond films that we have in this movie.
Okay, I'm looking at you right now in the camera. If you ignored Matt's spoiler warning, don't ignore mine. Stop watching if you've seen nothing of this movie yet, because I'm going to ruin it for you. Are you gone? Good. Excellent. Okay. What this film does is what no other James Bond film has done or attempted to do, maybe since On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which might be why a certain V8 saloon Aston Martin shows up, honestly. There's always a tendency after a run of James Bond, like any James Bond, all the way back to Sean Connery. Who's going to play it next? What's going to happen? Well, I don't know that I want to have another James Bond. Can't my favorite James Bond just make one more film, basically? No. No, he cannot. Felix, dead. Blofeld, dead. James Bond, dead. They made sure in this film to put a bookend at Daniel Craig's Bond. And they said, that's it. We're done with this iteration of the character. We've told our story. And that's part of what makes this such a good James Bond film and just a good movie in general. It has all of the things that you want. It's got the action. It's got the characters. It has all of the build-up from the previous films. In fact, I'd highly recommend that you go see Spectre again before watching this, or at least a YouTube video that outlines, what happened in Spectre before seeing this. Although I disagree with Matt on one particular thing about the bad guy, but I'll get to that. Really, what this James Bond film does for me is say, now we're done telling this story, so we can start fresh next time without, any of the expectations of this iteration.
I actually think that any of the last 3 Bond films could have been the last of the Daniel Craig Bond films, but yes, this one is the definitive end. There's no question remain that this is it. I think with kind of like Skyfall, it's kind of like, hey, we're back up to where we were with like the James Connery Bond. This could be, hey, we're linking all the Bonds together. We have Mallory at the desk. We have Moneypenny. We have Q. This could link all the Bond films. And then when we go to Spectre, it went more like, more kind of like, we're just kind of wrapping this up a little bit. And I think that could have been a decent ending, too. It could have been, James Bond finally has got that opportunity again. Is he going to stay with MI6, or is he going to go to try to pursue things for himself? And he kind of chooses, this time I'm going to choose myself instead of going back to Mallory and MI6. But this one is the definitive end. And we're going right from Spectre into this film. I mean, we're starting, kind of like we did with the first 2 Bond films. We're going from our first 2 Craig Bond films, I should say. We're going right from one right into the next one.
I would like to spend a moment talking about like the James Bond legacy. In this film, we see a lot of homages to other James Bonds. Like, even during the song, you start seeing like some of the dots for how Dr. No was introduced. Like the original James Bond film with Sean Connery. You see a whole bunch of what is essentially just James Bond trivia or Easter eggs in this film. They don't necessarily have anything to do with it, but from a legacy standpoint, they're just saying, we understand the legacy of this character is important to a lot of people. And, your James Bond might not be Daniel Craig, but hey, here's something from Sean Connery. Here's something from George Lazenby. Here's, something from Timothy Dalton, etc., and of course Pierce Brosnan. It's cognizant of its place and does a really good job of paying respect and homage to the character. And even you get a section here with Lashana Lynch's character. She's like, I'm 007, and James says, oh, it's just a number, it doesn't matter. And then later that comes back around. It's like, well, yeah, it might just be a number, but in reality it's synonymous with James Bond.
Yeah, one thing that's really good, and I think one of the strengths of this film too, I think, is the relationship between James Bond and 007, or the new 007 in this too. You would think these are two of like MI6's best of the best. To be a 00, you gotta be the best of the best. And a lot of the first movie, Casino Royale, is talking about James Bond's ego. He's a new 00. And in this one too, 007, I would say the same thing. She hasn't been a 00 for very long. I think, what is it, like 2 years or something like that, short time for 00. These are people with egos, and they're going to get in each other's ways a little bit in this movie. And part of that is that 007. Like, James Bond basically turned 007, like the number 007, into that role. Like, that is the top 007. And, the new 007's like, no, I'm the new top dog, and that's kind of what it is. But it looks into, it's not the number that makes the person, it's the person that makes the number. And I think the new 007 discovers that in this movie, that the reason the title is what it is because of the person behind the title, and that's James Bond. And so I think that's why we get the handing back of the 00 to James Bond, because I think 007 can make her own number. If she wants it to be this prestigious thing, she realizes it's just a number, and it's got to be through my actions that make whatever number I am more than what it is. James Bond's deserving of the 007 because it's the number that he made.
Absolutely. And that's part of her character growth, which is, it's interesting. She's nowhere near as cocky as James Bond in Casino Royale, but she absolutely has that ego about her, basically. And of course, there's the internet trolls out there who are just like, oh, a woman 007. I'm like, guys, 007's a number. Yes, you associate it with James Bond, and the film comes back around and says, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we recognize that. But, the internet, fury that happens over this, a simple thing like, oh yeah, this is the first female 007. It's like, all right, I'm sure it'll be fine. Don't worry about it,
To me, I kind of see it like sports. That's the biggest, comparison I think I'd make. And a big thing, like, we'll talk about, like, basketball or something, like the number 23. Like, that was, like, Michael Jordan. So a lot of people were really against LeBron James taking 23 when he originally did. It's like, yeah, you may be the next up-and-coming thing, but you're not Michael Jordan. And it's kind of one of those things, like, welcoming those comparisons, kind of thing. And I think that's kind of how I see with, like, this. Like, taking on the 007. I mean, there's some responsibility also with having that number kind of thing, and it's someone, trying to say like, hey, yeah, I am the new 007 kind of thing. So at least that's the comparison I kind of take a look at, or whatever. It's kind of like sports athletes or big star athletes and those iconic numbers.
Yeah, there's actually even almost a sports reference to it, where M is just like, what'd you think we were going to retire the number, Like, yeah, that happens in sports all the time, basically. So that's the thing. Now, I want to get to something else that you said, though, Matt. You said you really liked the bad guy. Why?
So, I think a lot of the other Bond films, looking at the other Craig films, part of the ones that I like and didn't like, a lot of it is on the bad guys. Now, two of the ones that I liked are Casino Royale and Skyfall. And I like the villains in there. I like Le Chiffre, and of course, oh man, with Skyfall. Oh, that is probably where I put over. Now, I did say that this is probably my third movie, and it's part of that is with the villain. Do I think it's as good as Le Chiffre? And do I think it is as good as what we have Skyfall? I do not, but I do think it's better than what we have with Green and Quantum Solace, and I actually like this character a bit more than Blofeld. Even though I think Blofeld's kind of enhanced a little bit in this movie, that's part of my tier ranking. So, is Rami Malek's character as good as those other two? I don't think so. But I think it's better than the other two films. And part of that is I like the backstory. I like how this is connected to Madeleine's character and stuff too. I think we get a little bit more of like his motivations and stuff too. We do get that with Blofeld, and Blofeld is built a little bit more, I guess, as a villain. But for me, I don't know. I was a little disappointed with Blofeld. Blofeld is an iconic Bond villain, and this is one that we've had before and that we recreated a bit in the Craig Bond films. So for me, that's why I mentioned that, and it kind of is kind of an indicator on why I think this is the third best of the Craig Bond films.
Fair point, but I'm gonna say I wasn't as sold on the bad guy in this, and here's why. Here's what bugs me so much about this bad guy is it's just a retread. Like the people behind the scenes don't know what to do. In Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, you have this group of terrorist organization that the intelligence agencies know nothing about, Quantum. And you're like, okay, we don't know anything about these terrorists. We don't know, they've been operating without us even really knowing that they are a group operating behind the scenes. Okay, cool, fine. And then Spectre comes, and you're like, okay, I get the behind the scenes, off camera stuff with Spectre and Blofeld's character and rights and all that, but on screen, it's kind of messy because it's like, oh, here's another super secret terrorist organization that we don't know anything about. And I'm like, oh, okay, didn't you already do that with Quantum? And now, with this one, with No Time to Die, the bad guy and his organization is another super secret terrorist organization that we don't know anything about. And I'm tired of that, I'm like, wow, I mean, originally that concept was good, but then like the group keeps fundamentally changing. It's Quantum, now it's Spectre, but now this is a group that's like opposed to Spectre because the bad guy, the villain that Raimi plays, has like a grudge against Mr. White and Spectre as a group. And I'm like, okay, but if you have this like undying hate for the people who killed your family, I can completely understand that. But I don't understand why you turn that into a super secret terrorist organization. Like once you get your revenge, don't you get your revenge? Once you've killed off all of Spectre, which he does in this film, isn't that like the end goal for you? Nope, you're gonna go sell your bioweapon? Okay. So I thought that was a little bit messy. I thought that could have been done better. Like maybe if he was Blofeld's, apprentice basically, and he's like trying to finish what Blofeld started. That would have made more sense to me than what they ended up going with. I'm just a little bit tired of super secret terrorist organizations that intelligence communities know absolutely zero about being the primary antagonists of James Bond films.
But at the same time, too, it doesn't break the mold. It was established in all the Bond movies before it in Craig. So, yeah, I agree. I think if it did break the mold, it probably would raise it higher for me. And like I said, to me, that's why it's in the middle. Because it continues, but I like it a little bit better than some of the other ones. Because it does have some layers on top of it. But yeah, I agree. Am I saying this is like the strength of the film? Nope. I just use it as, hey, this is kind of how I use it to kind of come up with my ranking of the Craig Bond films.
I'm not arguing against that. I'm just arguing that in this context, the bad guy was not as good as it could have been. That's all. That's all I'm saying. There was a place to go, and they decided to not go there. Like, all right, let's give this guy a different motive. Like, okay, we gave him a different motive, but does that motive make sense for the end of the film? No, not really.
I disagree. I think it does, because I think the main aspect of like the Craig Bond films and stuff is kind of talking a little bit about like James Bond, this character and stuff too. Le Chiffre and everything was kind of like talking about, all right, how do we find, James Bond's weakness or his tell or whatever? And Le Chiffre really hampers on, like Vesper and kind of like using Vesper kind of thing. And we kind of see that continue on. I mean, especially like Skyfall. Skyfall is so good because it makes James Bond kind of question I don't not I wouldn't say question, maybe not the right word, but it kind of looks at, like James Bond's allegiance to, Britain and stuff, and kind of like, you know, M puts you through this stuff. Do you really have allegiance to like M? And then when you go with like Blofeld's kind of like, well, I know James Bond personally because we have, this past kind of thing. I've been trying to ruin his life, from him becoming a 00 all the way to I'm like the author of this. And this one I think is taken a little bit more at Madeleine, because Madeleine is that final person. Like, we're set up as Madeleine is this character that is probably the only one that would actually be able to give James Bond happiness because, her father was assassin. I'll get in that a bit more because I actually think that's one of the weaker parts of this movie and one of the things I don't like about this one and Spectre. But I think it's kind of taken on that next thing. This is the villain that's in the way of James Bond having this happiness because of his connection not to Bond, but to Madeleine. So I actually think that it was written for a different element of Bond. How do we mess with Bond each way? We have different ways that we're doing it through each film, and I think this film takes that different approach. So for me, that's why I think it is well written for the character. Is it the greatest? No, I don't think it's the greatest. That's why it's my number 3.
Okay, I agree with everything you said, but I think we're on different pages of the same book, Matt. What I mean is not everything with Madeleine and Bond. From that perspective, this villain does a great job. And that's why I wish he would have been Blofeld's, apprentice, trying to finish ruining Bond's life, basically. Or, getting back at things instead of him being this guy who wants to get back at Spectre for killing his family. He wants to be this guy who is like, you took away Blofeld from me. You took that away from me, and now I'm going to take from you. I think that would have been a much stronger character than what we have. But my biggest argument is, as it's written, as this bad guy's written, his family is killed by Spectre when he's very young. He goes to get revenge on the killer, which is Mr. White, which is, in this case, Madeleine's father. And then he wants to, hurt Madeleine, but he doesn't want to kill her. He's like, I need to control her. I want her to suffer the way that I suffered, basically. All of that's good. All of that's great. What makes no sense is using this bioweapon to target millions, if not hundreds of millions of people, maybe even billions of people, and selling it to the highest bidder, basically. That is the part of the story that doesn't work for me. If he was just trying to, use it to ruin a specific person's life, that would have been more in tune with what we actually end up with at the end, as it turns out, with as the bioweapon, where it can target individuals based on DNA. My problem is, why does he have to be the head of a secret terrorist organization who's going to use this weapon to just sell it to the highest bidder instead of concentrating on what makes the villain really good? Those aspects that you pointed out with Madeleine and just messing with Bond. That would have been more interesting. That would have been more personal. That's what I wanted. Even though I generally do like the film, I'm like fan writing. This could have been done just a little bit better this way than the way you guys decided to do it.
Well, I kind of wonder. I guess I missed the selling it to the highest bidder part, because I didn't think that he is trying to sell it. I think he already has a plan on who he's going to use it on, because I think he realizes that it doesn't end with Spectre. Like, the things that happened to him and the wrongs or whatever doesn't end with the people who did it to him going away. I think he realized that after a while. So I think he's trying to do kind of almost like a Thanos. He's trying to cleanse the world of kind of like that problem.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you right there. There's a line. There's more than one line where they say the sellers are coming. Or the buyers, sorry, not sellers. The buyers are coming. Like, it's in the film. I'd like to believe that you're right, that he has this, plan of this doesn't just end with Spectre. I want to go after all of these other people, because he says, I want to...
We both eradicate people to make the world a better place. I just want to be a little tidier.
But then he says, no, the buyers are on their way. And I'm like, yep, that's it. It's all for money. You're Hans Grubering it,
If it is all for money, I disagree. I agree with you then. It does weaken a little bit for me. Again, I go back to it. It's my number 3 villain. Not the top, not the bottom.
Matt's defense is, guys, listen, I'm telling you, it's number 3 in my book.
Yeah. It's not as good as Le Chiffre or the other one, but when it comes to it, I think it hits enough notes for it to be in that middle part.
Oh, well. And then that brings me to, you were talking about Blofeld. Okay. I will also talk about Blofeld's character. I liked him in this, but not as much as Inspector, because Inspector, even if I never really bought into the whole, our father took you on as an orphan, and then I had to kill our father, because I was jealous. I'm like, okay, that's an extreme standpoint, Blofeld. But in this, he's acting out like he's able to affect things while he's in prison, and he's able to affect Madeleine. He's still able to affect James from prison. I like that he's such a mastermind that he can do that. And when James starts asking him questions, and James isn't getting the answers that he expects to get, Blofeld's giving you the right answer. He's literally telling you, oh no, your answers are with Madeleine. And James is like, give me a break. It's not her. You're just trying to mess with me. I liked the short amount of time we spent with Blofeld this time around.
I do too. I do like the short time we get in Blofeld. And that's what I was saying too. I think Blofeld is a little bit more enhanced, I think, with this than Inspector. To me, I think, Blofeld's kind of like the weaker parts, at least for me, Inspector kind of thing. Because, like I said, it's not like we're adding this new character. It's an already established Bond character. We're just kind of like redoing it. So, my expectations and stuff with Blofeld, I think it didn't quite meet those expectations when we actually see Blofeld in this. One of the things I think, too, that also was part of what I didn't like about Spectre and carry on to this was what I was hinting at was, like, Madeleine. And Madeleine plays a big part with, like, Blofeld in this. Like, Madeleine's the key. I am not really sold on, the Madeleine-James Bond relationship. I don't know, to me, like, the writing, I guess, is there, but I don't know if the chemistry is really there for me to really latch on and hold to this. It's one of those things where it's like, all right, well, Bond really likes her, and I guess I want Bond to be happy, and since Bond likes us, if that leads to his happiness, I guess that's why I kind of accepted it a little bit. But to me, I actually think it's one of the weaker elements of both Spectre and this film that I guess I'm still not sold on the relationship. Though we do get the reveal of, Bond's daughter, and though Bond only has a little bit of reaction to her in the film, I think it definitely does, kind of show like a new aspect. And, of course, we get that big, line from Blofeld in this,
You gave up everything for her. When her secret finds its way out, it'll be the death of him.
And I was kind of always wondering, like, going into this film, like, what is that secret going to be? What is it going to be? And kind of, when it's revealed what it is, I mean, you kind of see why it's the end of him, or at least why this movie is building up to that being the end of Bond.
Because he can't do what he has to do if he has that on the line, basically. That's the thing. Like, and, that's one of the most stressful parts of the entire film is... You're used to seeing car chases in Bond films. Okay, every day, no problem. Bond film car chase, excellent. Adults in the car. Bond films with children in cars, though. That is a whole nother level of, oh my god, I am sweating in my seat. Please don't kill this child. I will hate this film forever.
Not just any child, too. Bond's child, in there.
Like on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and I could be wrong about that. I'm fairly certain it's that one. Is the last time that we saw them do something this drastic. Bond gets married, and then at the end, his wife is killed by an assassin, There's precedent in Bond films for them to kill off those closest to Bond, but no one's ever had the, the nerve to make it a child before, basically. And you're like, oh gosh, don't kill off the kid, please. But here I will backtrack just a little bit before coming back to the child. I agree with you. The chemistry's not there. But here's the thing, what's weird about it. I think it might be an actor thing. I don't know this for a fact. Because when Leia is on her own and she has her emotional scenes like near the end where she's crying and she's like, I love you to James, and James is on his own because they can't be close to each other. I felt that emotional impact immediately where I'm just like, oh my gosh, these are two characters who actually do love each other, and now it's just, Bond can't be happy, basically. We cannot have him be happy. That would be against the character. So something terrible has to happen. I got that. When they're not on screen together, I feel the chemistry more than when I see them on screen together. And that was disappointing. Same with Spectre, where it's like, even if I can understand it from a writing perspective, I'm not sure together these two actors sell it as well as they could. But you know what? With the kid involved, it all kind of makes sense. She's got to be protective of her daughter, of their daughter. And that just brings everything up. And that, yes, like you said in the trailer, when her secret gets out, it'll be the end of you. Like, yep. 100%.
One of the things, and I don't know, Randall, if you feel this way too, but one of the action scenes in this may actually be my favorite action scene in all the Craig films. And this one, the one that I like, is the stairwell when we're going up to the end. And Bond, it's not really, I don't think it's like a one, take thing. I'm pretty sure there's cuts and stuff in there. But when he's going up to the stairwell and like the enemies are coming up at different stairs, and he's also using like bodies as like human shields and stuff. For me, how that's filmed and that whole sequence is actually one of my favorite action scenes in a Craig Bond film.
That action scene is pretty good, and that's a pretty raw action scene, which is pretty typical of the Daniel Craig era of James Bond films. I have that like one really, really raw action scene, but I'm surprised because I would have picked the Cuba scene. I mean, she's only in this film for a small smattering of minutes, but Ana de Armas is like really awesome as a CIA agent working under Felix, and that whole like Cuba action scene that sets everything up for the rest of the thing. I love the wordplay between them. I love the action that ensues, and then you get to see James versus this new 007 with Lynch's version of the character. I'm like, oh yeah, no, that scene was what I thought you were gonna say, but you're right. The stairwell scene is also awesome.
I'm glad you mentioned that scene too, because that is also in my list, the Cuba scene, and yes, it's up there, and a lot of it is because of Ana de Armas. She does so well, I think, in this. She almost like steals that part of this movie for me. I think her role is so well. I think she has such a nice presence on film or whatever for this movie and stuff. I absolutely loved the small role that she has in this film. I could have had more of it and would have been happy, but I'm glad with what we got from her. That part of it, I mean, not necessarily like the chemistry between them, because it's not really a romantic thing that we got for it, and I'm, glad kind of that we got what we did get of it. I think it was well done from start to finish when she's on screen to when she's no longer on screen. Excellent. I absolutely loved that whole part of the film.
What makes that so good, besides the action and the fighting and everything, is it's so rare to see someone go toe-to-toe with James with, wordplay, basically. Not really since Vesper has someone just, especially a female character, outside of M maybe, gone and just like, oh, you're popular tonight, and make all of these jokes that you expect out of James, but instead she's making them. This is a lot of fun. I've trained for 3 weeks, and I'm like, oh, I don't even know if she's being serious or if she's just messing around. Yes, she was lovely in this scene for a small amount of time.
Well, I think too, like you're taking it, she's different. She's different than a lot of the other characters that we see in like Bond films, like girls that James Bond, runs into that he kind of like woos or whatever. Nah, that's not this character at all. And all those elements that you brought that she brings to this character that we get and everything, I loved it because it is something that's different.
If you're just joining us because you've skipped ahead and you have dutifully skipped all of the spoilers, this is where the non-spoiler conclusion section is going to happen. All in all, there's a lot to be liked in this film. It is not a perfect James Bond film. I personally put it right there with Casino Royale, maybe a little bit ahead of Casino Royale in my rankings. It's still a really good James Bond film. It's a good film. I highly recommend, however, that you do go watch Spectre or some sort of thing that brings you up to speed with what happened in Spectre before going to see this. And I absolutely recommend going to see it in theaters, not waiting for it to come out on video.
Yeah, echoing Randall's sentiments, I think this is a really good James Bond film. Is it my favorite Craig Bond film? No, there are some parts of this that is a little bit lower, but it kept my enjoyment throughout the entire movie. Definitely check out some of the other Craig Bond films, and if you are a fan of the Craig Bond films, definitely watch this. This is definitely a good ending for the Craig Bond films, and heck, I can't wait to see where we go next with Bond. Bond will return, as always. Let us know what you guys think about No Time to Die. Where does it list on your Craig Bond films, or where does it list on your all-time James Bond films? Also, be sure to check out some of our other reviews. We have other new movie reviews, flashback movie reviews, we take a look at TV shows, and we have deeper dive discussions.
Make sure to go check us out on Facebook if you haven't already. We post the day before what's going to be coming up next on YouTube. However, if you don't want to bother with Facebook, it's okay. Just put us on your schedules. New videos every Monday and Thursday. For now, I'm Randall here in Texas. I'll see everyone next time.
Now I'm Matt here in Michigan. Have a good day, everyone. Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.